Here are my tips for teaching mixed level ESL or EFL classes. The first tip is to focus on the middle. If you have a class with like a huge range of levels, it can be hard to like cater to the very, very weakest student and then also the very, very best student. It's just not that practical. So I would focus on maybe like the middle, say like 80% of people, and there's always going to be a few students in almost every class who would struggle no matter what you do. And there's maybe always a few students who've like studied in Canada or went to high school in the US or something. So obviously an ESL class is not going to challenge them, and that's kind of okay. I just mostly kind of accept it as it is what it is, and I have a mixed level class, and that's just how it's going to be, and I try not to worry about it too much. Instead, I just kind of focus on the middle 80% generally. The second way to handle a mixed level class is to use lots of pair and group work. So I would do this in almost every class, but this is especially important in mixed level classes, because if you're just standing there lecturing to people, it's not really student centered. And also it's like probably the weaker students won't understand you. The higher level students will be super bored. But if you put students into pairs or in group work, they can kind of just get an opportunity to use whatever language at whatever level they're at, instead of just the teacher imposing their level on the class. Another tip for mixed level classes is if you give grades, like I did when I was teaching in a Korean university. Only do one test. It can be tempting to kind of do a lower level test and then a higher level test. However, it's really not fair if you're grading everyone according to kind of the same criteria, because the higher level students will be annoyed that they have to do a harder test, they have to study more, maybe they'll get a C, when in reality they could have not even studied and probably got an A+ on that lower level test. So only give one test. And don't worry too much about that. I think it's actually better in the end. And if students, for example, if they do student surveys or teacher surveys, the students are going to hate it if you give two tests, and some of the better students in the class get lower grades just because their test was harder. So avoid this at all costs. It's always a mistake. The next tip for teaching multi-level classes is to have learning stations. So this is when you set up little activities or little worksheets, little projects the students can do. They move around the classroom kind of at their own pace and choosing what they want to work on. So have some kind of easier ones, some medium ones, and some more difficult ones. And students can kind of choose what they want to work on. And maybe a very low level student, even doing the easiest activity, it might take them 30 minutes. Where some of the higher level students, maybe they can move around the class and do 4 or 5 activities in that same amount of time. So this is a nice way to kind of like target and cater to all the levels in your class. The next tip for teaching multi-level classes is to offer some free practice opportunities. So this will really challenge your higher level students to use whatever language they are capable of. So I always like to do kind of some teaching of a grammar or vocabulary concept, then I do some controlled practice, like maybe in the textbook you might find, and then freer practice. So this is where students are allowed to use any language that they want. The lower level students will probably only use the language that you taught them, where the higher level students will use a whole bunch of kind of different, interesting language, and that is just an opportunity for them to kind of show off what they know. The next tip for teaching multi-level classes is to give personalized feedback. So students often expect the native English teacher to give feedback, and that's okay. That's a great expectation for them to have. If I'm teaching a class that's all the same level, it's actually really easy to give feedback to the entire class. But mixed level classes, it's a little bit trickier because what you're saying to the lower level students is often very different than what you're saying to the higher level students. So I really like to target it to the students in particular if I can. So when they're doing an activity, you can kind of walk around, eavesdrop, see what students are doing, and kind of just give some quick little snippets of feedback to the different levels of students in your class. The final tip for teaching mixed level classes is to do a bunch of activities, kind of like surveys and little small talk mingle activities. So students can have an opportunity to talk to a bunch of different people in the class. You don't want like one of the really good students to be stuck with the lowest level student in the class, nor do you want that lower level student to have to talk to one of the higher level students in the class all the time because they won't understand what's happening. Instead, if you do a survey activity, you'll have a bunch of different people talking to each other all the time, and students can get an opportunity to maybe speak a bit simpler for the lower level student. They can challenge themselves with a higher level student, and they can also have some conversations with people at the same level. All right, so those are my tips for teaching multi-level ESL classes. If you like these ideas, please be sure to check out my book, ESL, EFL, Teaching Practice and Methodology. Please hit like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.